a peaceful people, struggling we struggle, and we don't look for trouble, just ask around. But when outside faces, from foreign places, talk about taking over, we ain't backing down. No, we ain't giving up no mountain, and we ain't giving up no tree, we ain't giving up no river that belong to we. Not the one blue sake, not one rice grain, not one chorus, not a blade of grass. This land is our land now, we're gonna make it somehow. We will bend like a bow, but never break. Our fathers came here, and they lived and died here, and we are moving from here, make no mistake. No, we ain't giving up no mountain, and we ain't giving up no tree, we ain't giving up no river that belong to we. Not one blue sake, not one rice grain, not one chorus, not a blade of grass. We love the open country of the Rupanuni and the Essequibo, daytime or night. Though we criticize it, this is our home, we love it, and we mean to keep it. We have that right. No, we ain't giving up no mountain, and we ain't giving up no tree, we ain't giving up no river that belong to we. Not one blue sake, not one rice grain, not one chorus, not a blade of grass, not one golden apple, not one jamun, not a drop of water from the farmer room, not one sherriga, not one mommy.
Probably on the maritime area give Venezuela a channel out to the sea. So you make a slight concession in the maritime area. You could probably on the maritime area give Venezuela a channel out to the sea. So you make a slight concession in the maritime area.
We are a peaceful people, struggling we struggle, and we don't look for trouble, just ask around. But when outside faces, from foreign places, talk about taking over, we ain't backing down. No, we ain't giving up no mountain, and we ain't giving up no tree, we ain't giving up no river that belong to we. Not the one blue sake, not one rice grain, not one chorus, not a blade of grass. This land is our land now, we're gonna make it somehow. We will bend like a bow, but never break. Our fathers came here, and they lived and died here, and we are moving from here, make no mistake. No, we ain't giving up no mountain, and we ain't giving up no tree, we ain't giving up no river that belong to we. Not one blue sake, not one rice grain, not one chorus, not a blade of grass. We love the open country of the Rupanuni and the Essequibo, daytime or night. Though we criticize it, this is our home, we love it, and we mean to keep it. We have that right. No, we ain't giving up no mountain. We ain't giving up no tree. We ain't giving up no river that belong to we. Not one blue sake, not one rice grain, not one chorus, not a blade of grass, not one golden apple, not one jamun, not a drop of water from the farmer room, not one sherriga, not one mommy.
After this resolution, I need to see a team of government and opposition members who should be appraising the nation regularly on what is happening. Again, the people's referendum in Venezuela is set for the 3rd of December, less than a month from now. And 75% of the population in know Guyana. That is an indictment on the government and to some extent the opposition, because we have a responsibility. We can't depend on them, because some folks, clearly, the job is above them. The job is above them. And I'm going to say to all those other people who are political people, you have to understand also context and content and optics also matters in these times. So we got to be careful with what we do. I am saying it's a serious issue. I'm talking to young people in the U.S. who are born in Guyana, but whose parents are from Guyana about what's happening. And apparently they know more than the children who are going to school in Guyana. That is a travesty. So let us start educating our people on this issue. We are doing Guyanese a disservice. What is the government keeping everything to the chest? Guyana is all we on. We have to know how you are managing this situation. And like I said before, this situation has to be fought on all fronts. The legal, the political, the diplomatic front, all is important. All are important. Not, they're not mutually exclusive. But politically, and I say this, people who know me know, if people don't see you, the person or the people who are under the kind of pressure that we don't take action, then people will think you're not serious. And I am saying, let there be a national day of solidarity. A national day for territorial integrity. Let there be a day. No work, no school, Guyanese. The country must stand still so the world can know. We just can't sit in our homes anymore. The country must stand still for a day. And Guyanese, wherever we are, we will stand in solidarity. People have to be creative. It's a set of, I don't know what to say, but again, it shows the level of seriousness. That's why, you got to always go back to Forbes Burnham. Master with words and action. But we are lacking. We are lacking, my people. And I'm saying, this is not time to sit in your home and hope that some US or somebody help you. Like I said, the matter was settled since 1899. We got to get placard out there saying that. So nobody coming and telling we for go and sit down at no table and renegotiate. We renegotiate what is ours? Are we crazy? Have bilateral talks with Venezuela for what is ours? And Jack, he also has to go and confront that statement where he was talking about giving away piece of Essequibo. That's why tomorrow, when you go to the parliament, people's position need to be clear. We don't need none of them who got clear position in no government. All them things that hanging over you, you got to be clear. Let us know where you stand on this issue. This is not time for dilly-dally. If you are saying that your political interest or your party's interests trump the national and territorial integrity of Guyana, you need to be out of office. Because that's partisan politics. That's that politics of national unity. That's not politics of national unity. And all I am seeing so far is partisan politics. We have to decide where we're going on this matter. We have to decide. I mean, I am so mad with what I'm seeing, with all that is happening and all that is being said, and there is no effective pushback. The opposition needs to have a strategy to deal with this madness. The opposition needs to have a strategy. Sometimes not everything, you know, or some people, oh, not everything you say you must rebut. But remember, if you don't rebut it, there are other people out there who are not as informed as some of us who will take that as gospel. And that is part of the problem. Because, you know, dictators and strongmanism, as I call them, they thrive on an uninformed population. And so I am wondering whether the strategy in the PPP on this matter is to make sure that the people are uninformed so they can do what they want. Opposition, we have to inform the people. We got to blanket across this country and inform the people. We got to blanket across Essequibo so the Essequibians must know that they're under threat. Could you imagine these people are already talking about what name they're going to give Essequibo? Do you understand that? Where are the intelligence people in the government? We get anybody deep down in Venezuela gathering information for we? Because they get plenty in Guyana. They get plenty in Guyana. These people already have a name and a plan for Essequibo. Let me tell you what that referendum will mean. Let me tell you that. Once the Venezuelans vote, because like I said, this issue is a winning issue in Venezuela for all the politicians, regardless opposition or government. Because this is what they've been feeding their people for decades. And you see the policia thing? You know, any wise government will understand that when you are in this situation, you don't make them mistakes, because bullies look for any sign that they could perceive as weakness to lodge their attack. And when you go brand Guyanese police vehicle with the policia thing, with the Spanish word, you have said to the Venezuelan government that you are as weak as a fig leaf. And that also give them the gumption to do what they're doing. Now you're trying to take it off. Y'all ain't smart. Context matters. Context matters. No, but you're trying to nice up and cushion up because all your intention is to bring these people so you could get some votes. Guyana's sovereignty doesn't matter more than you getting some votes to same power. That's all that mattered. So your action of appeasement has also contributed to this madness. Because that was an appeasement act. And the Venezuelans embedded in Guyana, they done wire Maduro. This is happening. It's a sign of weakness. Strong men, they look for anything. Sometimes your intent might be good. But how can it be good when it lambastes, when we're English speaking? But you lambasted your vehicles with them. Don't even say you get them in little small print and you ting. It's best to write every other language with next. You need the Dutch one now, you need the Portuguese, you need everybody now. So These are small acts. And again, I don't know who are the strategists in the government. I don't know who are the political thinkers in the government. I don't know who's the sensible people in the government because it's hard to decipher. That was a no-no from the go because you know where you are. You know the position that you're in. Context. You know, context. And so, for now, the VP again, not the president, the VP again, to come and say, oh, I don't know who think that it was wrong. I mean, and then the people of the country accept it. You telling me it's been on the vehicle months now, and you don't know until the people start uproar, and then you decide, no, it's not right. You were probably part of the decision. In my view, you were probably part of the decision making. Because all you see is your narrow partisan objective. And you see politicians who think in this narrow-minded way, it's dangerous. It's dangerous for national interests. Because all you see is retaining your power. And so the Policia thing was a way of you appeasing the Venezuelan because they're gonna come and you said to the nation they must get citizenship and vote. I mean, these are bold comments, and there's no effective pushback. These are bold comments, and these comments are made, again, context. These comments are made at a time when Venezuela said they're coming and take we over. You now saying give the Venezuelan citizenship. That again is a sign to Maduro. You have to understand who you're dealing with, but you see, your partisan lens is so important that national unity and country and matter. It's all about you getting what you want. It's childish. It's beyond the office of a vice president. And sadly, it's embarrassing to Guyanese. You should know better. You can't make those pronouncements. Anybody in their right mind would see that and say this is an act of appeasement. This is an act of appeasement for Venezuela. That's what you're doing. But in doing that, you're hurting the country. In doing that, you are weakening the position of the country, and that is why there is so much ambivalence and there's no firm position coming out of the government. The president going and dress up like Castro reboot, it's not helpful either. It's not helpful. We ain't going to war for what is already we own. That should be. We need to have some slogans and some messages out there that the world must know this is our position. We ain't going to fight for what is already ours. That has to be your starting position. That's your starting position. Of course, we know our soldiers will prep. Because we soldiers good too. Venezuela might get a big army, but we might be more effective. But we ain't going for talk war and fight for something that is already ours. So, strategy, we ain't got strategy going on. It's sheer wildness happening. The president saying so, the VP saying so, and the opposition saying so. So, where are we? And the people suffer in the interim. This is a serious issue, my friends, and I take it very serious. I don't go to bed at night without thinking about this. And all I'm seeing is that there's no strategy. There is no strategy. The Venezuelan politicians are out there every day riling up the people. Go and watch them. Where the government and tell people there. Riling them up. They're there in the suburbs. They're there in the ghetto. And they're feeding if you see that short with the Guyana flag, you understand what I'm saying? And we can't, with all them oil money we get, we can't make 800 t-shirts with Guyana flag and give the people and march in solidarity to let the world know that we ain't fighting for what is already ours. That has to be our stance. That has to be our position. So they, referendum or no referendum,
let me see what's going on there. Hamilton Green here with us. Good evening. Good evening. Yes, we welcome, and we will just play a song, and then we will have you in to discuss the issue at hand. Former Prime Minister of Guyana and perhaps the most long-serving mayor of Georgetown, Mr. Hamilton Green here. A very special guest on this program tonight as the conversation rages. I was speaking to one of my best friends last night in the United States, Terry Casey, and he was marveled by the fact that Hamilton Green is one of our politicians from the 60s that is still around, that is still lucid, that is still in touch, has his finger on the button, and with a photographic memory and an arsenal of history from the 50s. And with an arsenal of history, Hamilton Green is standing strong. We'll take a quick break before we bring, as we fondly call him as Guyanese, Hammy, to talk to us about the Guyana-Venezuela impasse.
We are a peaceful people, struggling we struggle, and we don't look for trouble, just ask around. But when outside faces, from foreign places, talk about taking over, we ain't backing down. No, we ain't giving up no mountain, and we ain't giving up no tree, we ain't giving up no river, that belong to we, not the one blue sake, not one rice grain, not one for us, not a blade of grass. This land is our land now, we're gonna make it somehow. We will bend like a bow, but never break. Our fathers came here, and they lived and died here, and we are moving from here, make no mistake. No, we ain't giving up no mountain, and we ain't giving up no tree, we ain't giving up no river, that belong to we. Not one blue sake, not one rice grain, not one for us, not a blade of grass. Love the open country of the Rupanuni and the Essequibo, daytime or night. Though we criticize it, this is our home, we love it, and we mean to keep it, we have that right. No, we ain't giving up no mountain, and we ain't giving up no tree, we ain't giving up no river, that belong to we. Not one blue sake, not one rice grain, not one for us, not a blade of grass, not one golden apple, not one jamun, not a drop of water from the farmer room.
Welcome, former Prime Minister of Guyana, Hamilton Green, is here in studio with me, and in the back room I could see him rocking to that song, and I know that there is some sort of nostalgia and memories and so on. He will be talking to us tonight about the history which he was a part of, and we will be talking about the PPP and their handling of this impasse. But I have to play this 10 seconds clip before I bring the man in, the great man in, to talk about the history from 1899 down to 2023 with the Venezuela Guyana's impasse.
Probably on the maritime area give Venezuela a channel out to the sea. So you make a slight concession in the maritime area. You could probably on the maritime area give Venezuela a channel out to the sea. So you make a slight concession in the maritime area.
Good evening to you, Hamilton Green, former Prime Minister of Guyana, former Mayor of Georgetown, uh, the head of the GGG, a political party in Guyana also. A very, very, very lustrous history, political history. But of course, you have been there. You have been there, I would think, pre-independence and post-independence. You stood shoulder to shoulder with Forbes Burnham, UC Quayano. You call them Balram Singh Rai, the great people of that time that would have stormed heaven, so to speak, to bring Guyana to where it is in its independence. Hamilton Green, it is a pleasure having you on this program. I want to start out by asking you to begin from the point in which the Venezuelan impasse began, and give us a brief history before we talk about that brief clip and Barajagdio's view of saying that we can give Venezuela a part of our territory. Hamilton Green, over to you.
Norman, forgive me, let me start on a light note. When the music was being played, my wife, who I describe as a delightful dancing Douglas, was at the table behind the screen. So that delightful song, Not a Blade of Grass.
Wow. And you say a pleasant good night to her for me, because the woman is always the backbone and we don't give them much respect. And tonight I want to acknowledge her. And I know that she's there with you and so on. Hammy, I want to call you Hammy tonight. I'm gonna become a big man tonight. I want to call you Hammy. I feel good to know that people who have formed our history, when we were little children running around, and I was reading the newspaper, collecting it from my father barefooted, and I look into the newspapers, I saw your picture there, and I saw an article about you. I was just a mere child, and today I am sitting here with you, being pompous and calling you Hammy. I should know my place. Hamilton
No,
Green.
no, please. I like young people call me Hammy because I feel as young as them.
Yes, you have withstood the test of time. Talk to us about that history, the Guyana Venezuela impasse, and let us take a walk down memory lane until we reach the avenue of what is happening today.
Norman, it's a very serious matter. And with the world in chaos and the fact that Venezuelan population is about 35 times our population, we must not simplify the ramblings, the rattlings, and this so-called referendum by Maduro. You know, human history, and we're part of the animal kingdom, is when a man is cornered, he does all sorts of irrational things. Like the animal, he takes out his claws and his teeth. But what you see proposed for next month is an effort, a last-ditch effort, by the president of Venezuela to salvage a sinking ship. As I said, it's a serious matter. But before I get into the details, he knows, and I know, he has played upon the mindset of a majority of Venezuelans, particularly an early generation, that truly believes that Essequibo is theirs. It's been a propaganda blitz since the turn of the century, and even though evidence is clear that the government accepted the 1899 award as final, valid, and the end of the story, so to speak, there have been those corrupt and right-wing folks in Venezuela who started and continue the nonsense. You probably know that all these years, the exercise books and some textbooks in every school in Venezuela had a part called, well, in English, the claim of Essequibo as theirs. My mother's elder sister, Wilhelmina Raka, lived in Maracaibo for years, and she married to a mixed Venezuelan gentleman. My first cousin visited. I must have been 8 or 9 years old at the time. And he got into very hot water when, in a conversation with my mother, he said, why don't you all give us back Essequibo? Well, my mother was a terrorist when it came to defending Guyana. And she sat him down and lectured him. But I mentioned that incident to say that the average Venezuelan, at least that generation, were taught, persuaded, brainwashed, whatever, to believe that Essequibo belonged to them. So that's the first hurdle that we have to overcome. I suspect that this generation may have lost in Venezuela that passion, that enthusiasm for this claim. But you can't take chances, you can never know. I don't think I need to go into the details, except that when Venezuela got her independence after their own internal struggles from the Spanish in 1840, the matter was not germane. But as time rolls on and the Monroe Doctrine was made known in 1823, which in simple terms said that the Americans were prepared to defend any country that was threatened by a European power to take away land or grab territory. That's a bit of a joke because the Americans have not been reluctant to do that. But that's another matter. So that when the matter came up again, in 1897, they agreed to have a commission, a tripartite commission. There were several judges representing Venezuela. Remember at that time, and it's important to have this background, that there was tension between the United Kingdom and the United States. Going back to 1812, when the British government, the Americans rather, accused the British of what they call appeasement, of stopping their ships on sea and seizing their sailors. So by 1897-98, relations weren't particularly handsome between the US and the UK. I say this as a background to show the validity, the power, the awesome importance of that award of 1899. There were three judges: the Chief Justice of the United States, the Chief Justice of the United Kingdom, and a very prominent Russian judge. They looked at all the documents, took into account that they persuaded the British to surrender, I think, about 30,000 acres of land that they were claiming from Venezuela when they were under Spanish rule. And that set the stage for the 1899 award. Intellectuals and university people ought to read the details of it. We had set up a commission headed by Sir Donald Jackson. I had lawyers like Shirley Phil Ridley at the time, and they looked at all the documents, and it is abundantly clear that the award of 1899 was final, accepted by all sides, including the United States, Great Britain, Russia, Venezuela. Well, Great Britain represented Guyana as we know it today. But there are always mischief makers, and in Venezuela, whenever they have an internal problem, they beat this border drum to evoke interest and to get a oneness, which is what they hope to achieve next month. We've got to be strong. I'm going to come to the handling of it on the Guyana side shortly. What you see happening here is part of a global problem. And I listened to a clip by former President, now Vice President Barrett Jagdew. What you need to get a hold of is the statement he made to an assembly of Venezuelans now resident in Guyana. For me, it is bordering on treason. And I hope that the average Guyanese, particularly young Guyanese, irrespective of political affiliation, race, color, or creed, will call upon Dr. Jagdeo, who is the de facto boss of the government, for one thing, based on the PP structure. He is General Secretary of the PPP, and he is the El Jefe, so to speak. And those of us who understand local politics will know that President Ali speaks with a voice, as we had in that microphone, his master's voice. So when Barrett Jagdew speaks, he's not speaking so much as Vice President, but as General Secretary of the People's Progressive Party. And in that Socialist Party structure, the General Secretary, to use a local term, is a top dog.
The powerhouse.
And I mean no disrespect to my canine cousins. So that it's a matter that should be taken very seriously. What does he mean by offering Venezuela a pathway, a maritime pathway? Absolute nonsense, inconsistent with the efforts made by Burnham before and after independence, and repeated, manifest In that song you just played, not a blade of grass, not one caress. There's nothing we have to concede. In fact, as young politicians, we refuse to use the word controversy. It's an issue raised by Venezuela on a matter that we consider settled a long time ago. Hugo Chavez, when he came to Ghana, I talked with him, quietly understood the matter was settled and sought economic cooperation. But since his demise, others have intervened, and I think there's mischief afoot from sources outside of Venezuela and outside of Guyana. Because there's evidence that during the Cold War, this matter was made to resurface to unsettle Burnham and Jagan as they moved towards independence, which we eventually got in May of 1966. I don't want to go into details, but to repeat myself, the responsible Venezuelan government accepted this as a final matter, dead, settled, long time. When we got independence in 1966, it's interesting with the background of the Cold War that the matter resurfaced in November when the Venezuelans took over the whole of Ankoko Island. You know, these surveyors have their own sense of humor. They draw lines through islands, through rivers, through creeks, in Africa, Asia, Latin America, all over the place. So the boundary line between Venezuela and Guyana made the western part of Ankoko, Venezuela, and the eastern part of Ankoko Island in the Cunha River, off the smaller river. Very, very clear. There are no known natural resources there. And speaking to some GDF officers who worked there in the 70s, the boys will come over and play tennis and have games with the understanding that neither side would carry arms with them. So they had developed a cordial relationship. But before that, I remember speaking to Senior Superintendent Lloyd Barker when a young man, I think his name was Stevens, a fisherman, went to the Bartica police and said he had noticed the Venezuelans had moved further east beyond the boundary line on Ankoko Island and had planted a flag. With dispatch, we sent off Lloyd Barker, and Lloyd removed that flag, the Venezuelan flag, which they had planted on the eastern side of Ankoko Island. There is no evidence that the Venezuelans have boldly done anything like that since. There exists an outpost at the bottom of it, Ettering Bang, which is full of gold. And of course, you know that there are the bandits from Venezuela who harass our miners on a daily basis. But the fact that they're now marshalling their troops on the border is not a joke. And Guyanese must have the wisdom. And I don't think that is a quality that inheres in this present government. And that is a tragedy. That is a shameful situation you and I face in this country today. They need to have the perspicacity to assess the situation. And when you hear this General Secretary of PP talking about giving the Venezuelans a maritime corridor, absolute nonsense. If I hadn't gone to church with my wife this morning, I'd use more appropriate language. And when you hear the same honorable gentleman assuring groups of Venezuelans who are living in Guyana that they'll be safe under his stewardship, it's another worrying matter. Because speaking to a senior government functionary at a function at the Pegasus some weeks ago, and the Prime Minister was there and the Minister of Foreign Affairs were there, they couldn't explain to me in lucid terms what mechanism they had in place to monitor each and every Venezuelan coming across our border, including the 80 whose ship collapsed off Tushin on the Essequibo Bank recently. I know the government have been part of security for years. We don't have the personnel to monitor the way a country should monitor people. Are they genuine immigrants? Are they persons running from persecution, from poverty? Are they plants? And who is feeding, clothing, and housing these people who all seem to be quite comfortable? So that I believe that it's a ploy, a plot by the People's Progressive Party for pure political purposes to pad the list. But what these people who lack the knowledge and experience fail to understand, they don't look at what's happening now in Ukraine and other parts of Europe. If, as is already happening, enough parts of, say, Northwest, that I know very well, I campaigned in Northwest, and you have blocks of Northwest, off Mabarumo, Posuloro, whatever. And as is almost the case today, the majority of so-called residents are Spanish-speaking Venezuelans. What is to prevent them doing what they did at Ankuku? Put up a flag and to say, this is ours. What are we going to do then? When you have the idiocy of your political leaders calling them, giving them the assurance they're going to be well off, talks about a maritime corridor for Venezuela at a time when oil is the big issue. And that's another matter. Big countries like the Soviet Union, China, India, United States don't act capriciously, you know. With oil prices up and these big fines that we have in Lisa 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. But that's another matter. What guarantee we have that the beneficiaries of that oil, if it came to clash of arms, would be on our side? We're dealing with a country that is numerically 35 times more than us. I haven't done the information on the military strength, but I know they must have particularly with Maduro coming after Chavez, they must have a more powerful military outfit than we do. That is why, in speaking to a group At Myconi a few days ago, I said to them, I have no difficulty with the leader of the opposition openly supporting what the PNC has always stood for, the fact that every square inch of those 83,000 square miles belong to us. I have no difficulty. But my position is, when I see him, to advise him, I don't want photo opportunities with Ali and Jack Dio.
Thank you. Go ahead.
He must take the opportunity, as Chetty did when he offered critical support, to make demands in the same way you can want to talk to me about Venezuela, talk to me about oil, talk to me about the cost of living, talk to me about discrimination, talk to me about apartheid. That is what I will be telling my leader to raise vehemently at the appropriate time. Because I said to the group of young people there, if the time comes, and it may very well come, for establish a military front or militia on the front line and the border, I make this point, and I hope I'm not saying anything that is illegal. But all those gentlemen who are getting the big bucks today, the people who get the contracts for all the pharmaceuticals from GPC, people like Critic who getting all these fancy
Contracts.
they must put on their fatigues and be part of the front line. And I will say to my young people at Den Amstel, in Georgetown, at Linden, yes, we will defend our country, but we will defend our villages and our communities in the first instance. That those who are now benefiting from our patrimony of oil go to the front line like Attila the Hun, like Julius Caesar. I don't want to hear any nonsense that we must send our young men and women to absorb the bullets from Venezuela, and they continue to exploit us with all these dubious contracts. When certain friends who rape our young people, when you have a commission where the Minister of Education is not being called to explain her role, when the underbelly and the philosophy of this government is to ignore local authorities and everything must flow from the top. A complete negation, contradiction of local governance. So that this matter must be used by our people to make sure we A, get as much as we can out of our oil patrimony from the present government, and we must not be used as frontline soldiers to take the bullets while they continue without reservation to enjoy the sweet. If I'm breaking the law, I hope I can be pardoned. But that is my position on this question. To restate, take this position taken by the Venezuelans in this referendum next month as a serious matter. Because those chaps aren't stupid, you know. They may see what's happening in Ukraine, in Israel, in the Gaza Strip, problems in India and other parts of the world, and think it is a good time to step over the border and satisfy the madness, the lunacy that has been implanted in their minds for so many years.
For so many years.
Because for me, when Desmond Roberts raised the golden arrowhead at the national park at midnight on the 25th of May, 1966, I took my independence seriously. And with the last drop of blood, I would defend my country against any aggressor, but not in circumstances that after making that defense, it is business as usual by the usurpers and those who indulge in criminal activity and continue with all sorts of skullduggery. There must be some condition to my asking the young people that I know to don their uniforms and to sacrifice their lives. I pause for that moment, Norman, because I prefer to ask me questions
Yes.
on matters maybe germane.
I can sit and listen to you without any interruption for the rest of the evening. Former Prime Minister of Guyana here, Hamilton Green, and we know that he has been mayor of Georgetown for a very long time. Hamilton Green is a part of the fabric of our political history in Guyana. When you mention Burnham, when you mention UC Quayano, when you mention the greats, Hamilton Green is right there. Unfortunately, he's still here with us. I want to ask you this question, former Prime Minister. Look, we know the referendum is in December. We know why it is going to happen. But give us your view of what you think will happen after that referendum. Will peace remain in Guyana? What do you believe will happen? As an experienced politician, as someone who has been around, you did say that that referendum is not to be taken lightly, and you extrapolated on a lot of issues. But I want you to say to our young people, to say to the people in the diaspora, to say to Guyanese in general, what can happen, what you think, can happen, worst case scenario, after that referendum in December, and how it could affect Guyana.
Well, first, I'll do what I can to speak to the leaders of the opposition, to give them my take on the position they should take with the government and with the people of this country. Second, we don't have a Quayana around, and Burnham is gone. So we lack that perspicacity within the governmental circles and young. People don't know, and let me share this with you because very few people are aware of this. You remember when Jim Jones came here, the PPP and others were very critical, eh?
Yes.
But Burnham was the wisest of them all, you know. He understood how successive presidents interpreted and applied the Monroe Doctrine. So he understood that having 1,000 or so American citizens in an area claimed by Venezuela was a sort of safety valve. I haven't said this to a lot of people, but those who I went to several functions during that time and heard American diplomats criticizing Burnham for allowing these terrible people from James Jones to settle. Mind you, Rosalind Carter, Jim Jones came with a very powerful letter of recommendation from Jimmy Carter's wife.
Wife.
And he
Yes.
preached at Sacred Heart Church. The second thing is, I haven't told this a lot of people because I believe I'm the only person alive with this knowledge. When the Venezuelans were doing their saber rattling, we had our friends from a certain country in faraway places with a well-equipped battalion of men. So when Bonham talked, he spoke with a voice of authority and confidence. And we experienced a lot of shenanigans in the Northwest and in the Essequibo. You remember when in an effort to punish Bonham, the people closed down the manganese company,
Yeah.
claiming they were mining in an inverted cone. Today, other groups are mining, making millions. Whether it is getting to our coffers is, of course, another matter. Gold is there in abundance in that same area where they closed down at one time. I say these things to underline the statement I made earlier. Don't take this move by Venezuela lightly because they understand what is happening. They know what's happening the price of oil. They know that insofar as the powerful countries are concerned, it is no longer a question of ideology or love of a few people who look like you and I. It's a question of hard that oil coming out there. If they can control Liza 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 and the reserves in Venezuela, they're happy. What happened to the rest of us? Let the ships go. So that what we need to do, and your program is an excellent means to do it, is to educate our young people, our young boys, Indo, Afro, Chino, Doglo, whatever, as to what it means to own and control a country which has vast resources.
Yes.
And let us go past this story of photo opportunities with Ali.
But let me
I will
ask,
be
without cutting you, former Prime Minister, without cutting you, what I want to ask you this question because I want to go on to the next question. Give us your view of what you think that can physically happen, literally happen, to Guyana after that referendum. Do you think that Venezuela can launch an attack on us? Give us a realistic view of what you opine that could happen after that referendum. Or is it just a smoke screen for political currency in Venezuela because of the problems? You did say that, Venezuela, whenever they're in trouble and so on, it is a perfect political tool to use to say, to distract their people and to win them over. I was speaking with Nigel Hughes, a prominent Guyanese lawyer, and former AFC politician, one of the most brilliant Guyanese today, the son of Clarence Hughes. You would know those history. But I was very impressed by Nigel's, interview. And Nigel said something, and I want you to extrapolate on that after you would have give us that view about what can actually happen, whether we were in danger or not after that referendum. Nigel said that what we have to be more worried about is if a right-wing government in Venezuela gets into power. Nigel said that under Maduro, left wing, that, you know, we share a certain amount of commonality and certain amount of understandings and so on, as you're aware. And he said that if a right wing gets in there, the points he made, he said that Venezuela has more oil than Guyana, and Venezuela has engaged in relationships even with the US today, where embargo may be raised very soon and so on. We saw a debate, Barbados Prime Minister Mia Mottley stopping short of standing on the side of Guyana because their relationships, current relationships, and pacts between Venezuela and Barbados, and she stopped short of saying, we stand by Guyana. She says she hopes peace remains in the region. What Nigel said, former Prime Minister and former Mayor of Georgetown, Nigel said that the dynamics today may see that our global partners may not be as enthusiastic as back then to stand with Guyana in this situation. And it can be that they may lean otherwise. And so I want you to say to the young people of Guyana and all Guyanese in diaspora and at home, what are your thoughts? Just be straight with them. Are we going to go to war? Will there be an invasion after the referendum? Venezuela set up thousands of people. I hear more than 100,000, in the Essequibo area the migrants have come over. What do you think will happen, former Prime Minister and former Mayor of Georgetown?
I agree entirely with Nigel's concerns as expressed. The problem is I don't have that sense of prognostication
Okay.
to know what will happen. Because if you have a right-wing government supported by the oil giants, and therefore you know who, I'm not too sure where we will be ground up. That is why I began my statement by reminding all of us that Venezuelans' population is 35 times ours. We're 0.8 million, they're 28 million. And these are factors you must not ignore. And if those 28 million find a common enemy,
Yes.
a common purpose, and therefore a common friend, we need a leadership in this country with wisdom, the strength to mobilize all of our people, not some of our people. It has to begin now in our schools. People in West Coast with Beast, East Bank, Denver, from the national where you come from, must now begin to get a feeling that this oil patrimony will be shared equally and fairly among all of them. You can't ask me to fight for someone who is discriminated against me. It's difficult. It's not human. And that is the point I sought to make in my initial contribution. It's a serious matter. I was speaking to a friend who has a concession in Ettringbank. He is at the moment in North America. And he said the word he has is that Venezuela is prepared to invade Guyana beginning from that area.
Wow.
Now, we are a country of rumors. But use your imagination. Venezuela has fighter jets, we don't. Venezuela has trained people. We don't, not at the level they have.
Yes.
And you must, and I need to remind us about this fact that as we approach Republican status in January of 1969, groups in Venezuela, trained groups led by the Harts and Melvilles in the Rupuni to stage the Rupuni uprising because the Melvilles and the Harts, I know what they look like, said they were unprepared to live under the presidency of the son of a slave. I say that to inject another dilemma we face in this country and to say this matter needs more discussion. Nigel is right, and we must not, with 0.8 million people, and that oil we have out there, that gold we have out there. I was in the Northwest a couple of years ago, and the boys are finding gold along the old railway embankment between Matthews Ridge and Kaitumo. Gold in abundance. And I've been preaching to this government to stop this nonsense we hear from Ali of bringing in more investors. We have enough investors in this country if properly managed and the revenue comes in to make every Guyanese at home and abroad comfortable in the purest sense of the word, no blackouts. So that why you bring in more people? We don't have the absorbent capacity. They admit GRA and the agencies can't monitor the bills submitted to them by the oil and gold people. So what you bring in more investors for? Because there's a cabal reaping a rich harvest, and you and I have to drink stink water and face blackouts.
Wow.
This week,
Wow.
this week my wife had to fork out
Wow.
thousands of dollars to service our generator and buy diesel in a country that is the fastest growing economy.
Economy, yes.
We go to the market, and because of the weather, and there's a theory that dumping that hot stuff in the Atlantic may be affecting the weather. I don't have a scientific analysis, but that is the prognosis by some people. The place is extremely hot. My wife, who's a mini gardener, can't even reap proper sweet potatoes and sweet peppers now. The place is so hot.
Hot, yes. The world is experiencing global warming, and I'm not negating the fact that the mishandling of Guyana under this current regime is causing serious problems. Former Prime Minister Hamilton Green here on Voice of the Diaspora. Look, I want to ask you this question, and I want you to be very candid. But before we go to that question, I want to because Dr. David Hines is a scholar. He's a product of Guyana. He came through the struggle. He fought your government while you were standing next to Forbes Burnham, and he came back at present time to push back the hegemony of the PPP and to stand with the PNC as a representative of the WPA. There's been a principal position from Dr. David Hines. We may not have agreed with him during the Rodney period of how they handled the government of Forbes Burnham, because if they would have seen what the PPP is today, I think that they would have hesitated to even carry a struggle against a visionary that wanted to see Guyana, a place that belongs to Africans and all ethnicities in Guyana. But Dr. David Hines, who is a professor at the Arizona State University, was on this program, and we had a discussion about the Venezuela situation. I want to play this clip because I want to give you an opportunity to have a drink of water and so on. I'm going to go get a drink of water and so on. It's going to be a few minutes, but I want you to listen to it. And when we come back, you will answer the question that I ask.
Okay. To play politics against us. And we are going to respond. And they respond. They said they're calling a referendum. They're massing troops on our borders. No, those things may not come to anything tomorrow. But the fact of the matter, the massing of troops there may make our population say, wait a minute, is it the right thing we are doing? They're massing of troops and they're threatening to go to a referendum, not threatening, go to a referendum, can chase away investors. All right? No, the Venezuelans doesn't have to invade us. They can use the threat, chase away investors, destabilize our population, meaning make people in our society say, oh shit, we should not have brought these Americans in. We should not have exploited this oil. They're creating doubts in the minds of our people. So when we are making policy, we have to take into consideration the competing demands of the various groups in Guyana. We have to take into consideration the investors by the big countries, and we have to take into consideration Venezuela. And I don't think this government understands that. No. So Venezuela has to behave in that way for our government to wake up and to realize how serious the threat of Venezuela is. And it still does not realize. No, the Venezuelan opposition and government don't like each other. They behave as mortal enemies. On this issue, they're finding common ground. What the hell is our government doing in terms of common ground in our own country?
Well, I think not. Dr. David Hines there. What are your thoughts on what Dr. David Hines said there, former Prime Minister?
Instructive, because as he spoke, I remember Khalid Gibran, pity the nation that is divided into fragments, and each fragment thinking itself a nation state. It's an opportunity, let me expand on what David said, to tell this government in clear, unambiguous terms, it cannot be business as usual. And even though we stand together to fight and to ward off the threat of Venezuela, we, and when I say we, I speak about David Hines and the Hamilton Greens and others, must stand together and to say to this government, this debauchery of democracy must come to an immediate end. This nonsense about feeling they have the divine rights of kings must be suspended. This last week, President Ali, I heard him with my own ears talking about Georgetown, saying the city council has failed the people. So they're going to dig canals and build roads at a time when they have consistently denied each mayor the opportunity to raise money. You can't do anything without money, management, and materials. They use the local government commission to impose on the elected councillors, officers of their ilk. They're denying the council money and then doing like the old smart man. Tie a man's foot, tie his hand, throw him overboard, and with propaganda and cameras blazing, cover the speedboat and rescuing. That's what they're doing with these bridges and now things all over the place. So David is right, but we've got to stand together, our people in particular, to put an end to this debauchery of democracy and demand in the villages from Ithaca to Buxton that this one Guyana must mean we want a share of that cake, a bigger share of the cake, and not what we see evident today. The building roads that collapsing, contractors who have been blacklisted getting jobs, the drugs at the public institutions, all sourced from Jack Joe's best friend. Yesterday, a former minister called this house
Wow.
to seek assistance to get certain drugs from a family member who's traveling this week, not available in this country, with the fastest growing economy.
Wow. Wow. I can just say
I
wow.
can give thousands of examples. But if you take the pharmaceutical business, it is to put in the hands of a chosen few the big bucks. You get eye drops that burn your eyes. You still have to go for simple procedures to the private hospitals. So they've announced a private hospital is going to Bath, not Fort Wellington, mind you, where there's already a facility. And we're not training sufficient nurses. You're building schools with all this oil money and have their comedians go to the president to ask for funds. Imagine that.
Wow.
We have to stand up and say enough is enough.
Is enough. Wonderful point. Former Prime Minister, my final question to you. I know you can go all night and so on, but we have to, wrap up. But my final question to you before you give your closing remarks, and you have a few minutes to give your closing remarks to talk about anything you want to talk about. I want to deal with the opposition, and I want you to be candid. What is your view about the opposition in all of this? Are you satisfied that the opposition is doing what it ought to do in the correct manner, in a unified way, in a way that says to our constituencies that we are uniting on an issue, but we are standing with our oppressed supporters when it comes to our local situation? What are your views on the opposition at this point and how they are relating to this matter, how they are working with the government, and whether they are being shortchanged by the PPP
Well,
on this matter?
There seem to be some rumblings, if I can use a local term, within certain elements of the opposition, both at the party level and at the formal opposition level. I've listened to all the speeches made by the opposition leader, Bobby Norton, and they're quite in order. But there is a problem, And I don't want to say too much because I'm working daily with the various groups to let them understand we don't have time for nonsense now. And I will tell you and share with the diaspora a story I've told 1,000 times
Yes.
to persons who have heard me speak. I grew up in a yard with 5 dogs. One was what they call a white wire hair. And I'm giving that example deliberately.
Yes, go ahead.
You know, you can't bite a wire hair dog. They're always fighting. But the day a strange dog came, a postman left the gate open by mistake. And a strange dog entered that yard. And those 5 dogs mangled him and left him dead. I say to my friends who express concerns about the leadership, what is going wrong and what is going right. We don't have time for that now. We have a formidable, well-funded, uncaring enemy at our gates. When we destroy him, or her or them, we can then afford the luxury of fighting again amongst ourselves. That is the message almost on a daily basis. I'm giving the group members, senior members of the executive, members, in fact, I spoke to the mayor up to yesterday because they have their own problems within the municipality in Georgetown. I spoke to the mayor last Monday. I went to a funeral of a relative who got burned to death and said to him, you have to calm down to deal with a very rampant, rowdy PP councillors who want to engage you in a cuss out. So I told him, be calm. I had almost 20 years with those people. So I'm doing my bit quietly. So I don't want to say much more. I don't want to call names. I'm speaking to several people, and I hope I can prevail upon them that we have to work together because the enemy wants to re-enslave us, and that's not an exaggeration.
I agree.
They want to re-enslave us, and they learned that from their own master. They want to re-enslave us. And our young people who I speak to from time to time must recognize the danger. The message I'm leaving with some of them I'm not taking the whole question of education seriously. In this area where I live, you have young mothers, young grandmothers, and unless with this new, highly technological age, part of the effort of the policies of politics is to prepare our young people for the next stage with education, science, sport. We'll always be, as Dr. Jagan once said, at the bottom of the ladder. So I'm working quietly in my communities. When I go out of town, I was in Maikoni last week. I'm talking to people very quietly and hope that those talks to the catalyst to turn things around and expose the chicanery, the rascality, and the corruption of this government.
The rascality and corruption of this government. Former Prime Minister of Guyana and also one of our longest serving mayors of the capital city, Hamilton Green, here on the program. We are winding down now. And so I will give the Honorable Hamilton Green the opportunity to give his closing remarks. I know that he has spoken on the PPP and he has made it very clear. We have to make that call for Guyanese to unite. But I strongly believe, as I think he believes also, that the rascality of the PPP, because of that, there's no intention for any serious unification. And because there is no intention for any serious unification with the opposition, I said to Nigel Hughes on the program, a prominent attorney at law, Nigel Hughes, and former AFC chairman, I said to him that it was a fundamental mistake for the PPP to call the opposition into their lair to give a message to the world that they can call the opposition into their lair to discuss unity, but not in Parliament and not anywhere else. And Nigel disagreed with me. He disagreed with me and he said, we have to look at the tactic. That's a tactic. But in principle, the opposition had a right to unite with the government on this issue. And I was arguing that while we have a right to unite with the government on this issue, we have a right to instill in our people that we, regardless of this issue, this border issue, that we have a foremost responsibility to stand with our people who are murdered and killed, who are murdered and, oppressed by this regime, to say to them that we have the gumption to say to the Guyanese people, wherever they are, that we stand with the government and that we will sit in Parliament with the government where our people have elected us to be, to deal with this Venezuela issue as equals. But for the government to call us into their back rooms for photo opportunity, to show the world that they can call the opposition and sit down with them. And then a few days later, Barajagdi goes out and says the opposition is practicing xenophobia and totally disrespects the opposition. But Nigel was saying that he doesn't agree with that and so on. I want to ask you in real politics, former Prime Minister, could an enemy invite you to his home for a wedding when he took away your brother's wife? And because, I want to be real, because I have to put my hands up and say, I'm not as bright as Nigel, and certainly I'm not as bright as yourself. I have no historical, connection to the history of this country and so on. But I am happy that I am sitting with yourself and Nigel, and I love you both tremendously. But the thing is like, I find the problem, and young people find the problem with that. Could the enemy call you into their lair when you have your veranda where you can say to the people, on principle, we stand with this government, though it's an enemy, against the foreign enemy. Like you said, the dog that came to the gates that the postman left open, the dogs that were fighting in that yard that lived together, they suspended that battle to deal with that dog that came there. That strange dog that came there. So I want you to, I really, if you want to say I'm wrong, say it, because I can take the hit. But I feel strongly, former Prime Minister, that regardless of Venezuela, what we are experiencing under this regime and what we have experienced under them for 23 years plus the 3 years that we are existing in, Venezuela hasn't done that to us. They have done that. Our own government would have done that to us. And if we are to represent those who are suffering under us, that this government sees worse than Venezuela, Barajagdio is treating Venezuelans and migrants better than he's treating us in that short time. And if we are to stand up, you can't call me into your lair as a B-lap, as the ghetto people say, as a B-lap, to sit down with you and say, yeah, I agree with you. I will stand on my veranda and say to the country I stand with the government and the people of Guyana in this struggle against Venezuela. But my local enemy cannot call me into their lair to sit with them. They can call me into parliament where my people have reposed confidence and where I have a legitimate right to defend my people and the Guyanese people in parliament to deal with this issue. Am I wrong, honorable comrade, to have said that?
Norman, let me say, first of all, I understand every word you just said. That's why
Thank you.
I've spoken to some MPs and I'm attending the session of Parliament tomorrow where this matter will be raised. A lot has to do with the language you use. I am unprepared to be part of any bacchanal where the PP says to me, my party and my leadership, I'm asking you, I'm discussing with you to support the government against Venezuela. That is the wrong language. What I have tried to say to some of the MPs I've spoken to, the PNC, WPA have always made it abundantly clear. We ain't giving up nothing to anybody. And that the saber rattling from Venezuela must be seen in the context of our consistency as nationalists, as patriots, to defend the people of this country, not the PPP. And that is a fundamental difference as a question of the language you use. You see, some of these young fellas don't know to use the king's language properly. You remember when Margaret Thatcher turned to Burnham and said, Mr. Burnham, why it is you never use the word agreement? You always you use the word concession or other language. What was the word you used sometimes? Consensus.
Consensus and
But Burnham
concessions.
said,
Yeah.
Madam Prime Minister, which is easy, agreement or consensus? We see these young fellas haven't walked behind people like Burnham enough. They haven't listened to what Guyana said in the 50s. And even now, they're not listening. But there is hope. I believe after Parliament tomorrow, we should see a new picture emerging where this government just can't call upon the opposition when suits them, ignoring oil, cost of living, blackouts, and other German issues
Thank you so much. Go
that
ahead.
affect the daily lives of our people. An education system that has almost been destroyed. Look at how they're manhandling the major commission inquiry. You know? So that give me tomorrow and let's see what happens. I share your sentiments, I understand what you're saying. Again, it's a question of the language you use. And I've told some of the young political aspirants to learn what language to use so that you don't expose yourselves. I told them if you take your arrow out of your sleeve, pull it, be sure you're not putting it to a moving target. And that is what we're dealing with. A moving target. I'm not too sure who are the puppeteers. And this is what Guyana faces with Venezuela and other issues. And we must be strong because I don't want, whenever the Lord takes me, I hope we give it another decade or so, that we leave this country fragmented and in a state of poverty with all this money, all this gold, all this oil God has given us. This week I had a call for one of my daughters. There's an earthquake in Jamaica. There were no deaths, but buildings were destroyed.
Right.
Didn't hear about it because other news.
Other news, Palestine and Israel and
Right.
Russia.
We don't have that problem in this country. We don't. We rain or fall just not to cool the place down. We are a lucky people, and we must ensure the money coming from that oil should eradicate poverty immediately. You can imagine that oil under a previous government, that money. First of all, the feds couldn't get away with this nonsense. We said to them and said, look, we need more. Yes, you get a lot, you have the machinery, you drilling, you found the oil. Because we knew we had oil since 1960, but nobody wanted to produce the oil. But you're dealing with men, as one judge once said, men of meager moral fiber. And that is our problem.
Meager moral fiber. Wow, I have
That's
never
our
heard
problem.
that term. That's our problem. Former Prime Minister Hamilton Green here, one of Guyana's longest standing mayor of the capital city, a illustrious history, political history, and he is still sitting here with us. I want to throw this out there. I hope I can have an interview with UC Guyana, and I hope his son is watching this and others who are watching, because I don't want him to discuss any controversial issues. I want the young people of Guyana to know who UC Guyana is, his contribution, and a simple view of this Venezuela situation. Nothing controversial, nothing severely political, but I am hoping to have the opportunity to discuss with you, Yossi Guyana, his history, so that the young people who follow this program, lots of young people across the diaspora and at home that follow this program, as you know, I'm connected to Lauret Strode, Magnum, all these younger people who are prominent in their own right in our society, that our society would have pushed aside because of that sort of political, you know, straight jacket thing that nobody else matter. We have revolutionized the fact that every guy needs matter. And so I can call Lola Doll, I can call Magnum, I can call so many young people that have a voice in the society, not a political voice, but they are part of the society where so thousands of young people follow them. And in politics, we have to expand and draw everyone in so that we can have a commonality of views and so on. Let us take
Well,
a
Norman,
yes.
I'm glad you interviewed UC, because let me tell you of an incident that took place at the Parliament buildings several months ago. They had a function there to honor parliamentarians, and they had a plaque, and they called Ashton Chase's name.
Yes.
So when they were finished, I got up from my seat. I said, what about Sidney King and UC Guyana? Because at that time, before Ashton died, there were only two men alive from the first 6 ministers. And I got up and I shouted. My wife was there, she'll tell you I behaved bad. Because when I called the young officer, he told me his instructions were to read the script he was given.
Wow.
That's the
Wow.
vulgarity.
That's the
of this
vulgarity of this government, and it's so consistent. Former Prime Minister, we'll take a brief break and then we'll come back and you'll give your closing remarks and we will call it a night. Former Prime Minister here, Hamilton Green, a long-serving mayor of Georgetown, and a seasoned politician, someone who stood shoulder to shoulder with Burnham, Chedi Jagon, UC Guyana, and all others. The young people are fortunate to have him here, lucid as ever, in a modern world, where he came from pre-independence into post-independence and was a part of that struggle. Former Prime Minister Hamilton Green here.
Probably on the maritime area, give Venezuela a channel out to the sea. So you make a slight concession in the maritime area. You could probably, on the maritime area, give Venezuela a channel out to the sea.
We are a peaceful people, struggling we struggle, and we don't look for trouble, just ask around. But when outside faces, from foreign places, talk about taking over, we ain't backing down. No, we ain't giving up no mountain, and we ain't giving up no tree, we ain't giving up no river, that belong to we. Not the one blue sake, not one rice grain, not one chorus, not a blade of grass.
I haven't seen a blue sake in a long time. You remember the blue sake and remember the jamun and so on. We have a common history, and regardless of the generation gap, I always say, and I mean it from the bottom of my heart, Hamilton Green, and I have said it to Nigel and Dr. Hines and loads of others. I am living a dream. Not a dream of playing football or making millions or whatever. I am living a dream of rubbing shoulders with people that meant and mean something to me, and that where I was in my silent moment, small and insignificant, saying, if I ever had that opportunity, and I know it will never happen because my whole life doesn't envisage that of happening, and it is happening today. It is a tremendous, to me, achievement, and I think that my life's dream is being realized as the days go by. I want for nothing. And so on, and this means more to me than anything else in the world at present. It's 2:26 a.m. in the UK, and I'm up and talking to you. Former Prime Minister Hamilton Green, long-standing mayor of Georgetown, perhaps the longest serving mayor of Georgetown, astute political mind and a historical figure, alongside UC Quine, Forbes, Burnham, Chedi Jagon, and others, right here on Voice of the Diaspora. Your closing remarks, sir, before we wrap up.
Well, let me first congratulate you and to say to you, don't underestimate the magnificence and the significance of your program, particularly in diaspora, where they're buffeted by news from the Western media as to what is going on in Gaza and other places and Guyana. So keep the work up. Get hold of people like Guyana, David Hines. Lincoln Lewis is a good man to talk to because they opened the Congress, I think, on Wednesday. And I am here at any time with the support of my wife, who is keeping me going.
Yes.
Available at any time. And when you want some good medical tips, you can call on her too. Even though she's a big gardener now. He's laughing. I was coming down from Borbis the other day, and I stopped at a place called Dam looking for somebody, and the chap came out. He didn't recognize me at first, I said, I am green. He said, oh, you haven't on green? But he ignored me. He said, that's your wife? She delivered my last child who's 20 something years old. He had no time for me after that.
But you see, you know what, Comrade Green, your wife is a no, she is a medical doctor, and she was known back in those days. She was affluent. There are people who said they went to IFLOT University. There are people who put in on Fidel Castro. But and I, you know what marvels me, because your wife, I, as a youngster, knew her name. You could have identified with people of substance. Even if you were an ordinary person, you would say, wow, Hami, this person, that person, they have caliber and social standing, and that we have to recognize and respect that. Today, people are respecting people who were saying they've been to IFLOT University. People are embarrassing this country as a president of a country. Intellectual constipation. They can't, and we are at a juncture where Guyana, from what it used to be from the time of Forbes Burnham, the time of Guyana, yourself, Martin Carter, you can go back to people from Guyanese and Guyanese extract, that when you mention their name, the West can say, we recognize them. Who recognizes a man who says he been to the University of IFLOT, and there has never been a University of IFLOT existing anywhere in Guyana? Former Prime Minister, thank you so much for being so much in this program, and I hope that when we remove this regime very soon, because that's my work, really a part of my work, and my energies will be exerted there vigorously to remove this regime, that we can make the rough smooth, that we can honor those who have contributed throughout the decades, and that we can honor them fittingly, whether it's posthumously or in life. But I know that we have to do that, and I hope God preserve my life, because I'm angry and I am ready to push back anything to ensure that yourself and others, you see, Guyana, all those people, have their place in history and posterity that they deserve, and a jagdio. You said chief dog, and you hope you didn't insult other dogs, but I can say other things. Former Prime Minister, thank you for being here on this program. One minute to wrap up, and we'll call it an evening. Go ahead.
No, I just said, thanks a lot. Keep up the good work. And I still don't understand what Jagjo just said. It is nonsensical. But we're dealing with intellectual morons.
Yes.
Or very wicked people. I'm not too sure which is which. That statement he made, I found it. I didn't hear it before, but it's really troublesome. You're giving Venezuela a maritime what? Nonsense. Anyway.
Former Prime Minister, thank you for being here. Hamilton Green, former Prime Minister of Guyana, and former mayor of Georgetown, the capital city. We're now in an oil-rich nation, and we have to close ranks. We have to ensure that every Guyanese, regardless of ethnicity, regardless of class status, regardless of whatever, get what is due to all Guyanese in Guyana. We know that the PPP does not want that to happen, but this struggle continues. Thank you so much. We ain't giving up a mountain, man. We ain't giving up no sea. Not one rice grain, not a jamoon. Nothing we ain't giving up. So we're saying as Guyanese, as Laureline Nestor said, as Nigel Hughes said, as Dr. David I said, and as yourself said, we have to stand as patriots in Guyana. We have to stand as Guyanese to push back Venezuela. Thank you so much, former Prime Minister, for being here on Voice of the Diaspora. And thank you, Mrs. Green, for preserving him and keeping him. And we recognize you and we acknowledge you and we love you, because most times it is the woman who is the backbone of the man, but because of our ego and so on, we don't give the woman the recognition. I remember in my studies of religion and so on, the question was asked to me when the Bible said, let us make man, what they were referring to. And they said, is God and his male angels. God was speaking to the woman, because it's only a man and a woman that can make man. The woman was there to create this universe. And I appreciate your work, Mrs. Green. I appreciate your work, humble medical doctor. You didn't go to IFLOT University, and certainly, you are not someone that is like those who are trampling Guyana. Thank you so much, and let us continue this struggle. Thank you, Comrade Hamilton Green.
We are a peaceful people, struggling we struggle, and we don't look for trouble, just ask around. But when outside faces from foreign places talk about taking over, we ain't backing down. No, we ain't giving up no mountain, and we ain't giving up no tree, we ain't giving up no river that belong to we. Not the one blue sake, not one rice grain, not one grass, not a blade of grass. This land is our land now, we're gonna make it somehow. We will bend like a bow, but never break. Our fathers came here, and they lived and died here, and we are moving from here, make no mistake. No, we ain't giving up no mountain, and we ain't giving up no tree, we ain't giving up no river that belong to we. Not one blue sake, not one rice grain, not one chorus, not a blade of grass. We love the open country of the Rupanuni and the Essequibo, daytime or night. Though we criticize it, this is our home, we love it, and we mean to keep it. We have that right. No, we ain't giving up no mountain, and we ain't giving up no tree, we ain't giving up no river that belong to we. Not one blue sake, not one rice grain, not one chorus, not a blade of grass, not one golden apple,